Hello and welcome to Workers Comp Unwrapped, the podcast that simplifies workers' compensation for physicians. So, let's get started. Welcome to Workers Comp Unwrapped.
Hey everyone!
This is Season 4, Episode 5, and I'm your host, here with our resident industry expert for today's discussion.
Always great to be here.
So today we are jumping into a brand new deep dive. And it's a fascinating one.
Oh, it really is. It's one of those hidden traps that's just catching everyone off guard lately.
Right. We've got a whole stack of source material looking at this massive spike in cross-state workers' compensation claims right now in 2026.
Yeah, the landscape has just completely shifted.
And our mission for this deep dive is to basically figure out why treating an injured worker from another state has suddenly become this absolute billing nightmare.
A total nightmare, yeah.
And more importantly, how medical providers can actually protect their practices from all this red tape.
Because if you're not careful, it will completely sink your clinic.
Exactly. But before we get into the weeds, I was thinking about how funny it is when we think about borders.
Like state lines?
Yeah. Most of the time, they're completely invisible. Like you drive down the highway, you cross a state line, and...
The only thing that changes is the welcome to sign on the side of the road.
Right. The sky doesn't change color, the pavement feels exactly the same. But legally, financially, you've just stepped into an alternate universe.
It's a profound shift, and you can't even see it.
Yeah.
And usually, we don't have to think about it until something breaks down.
Which is exactly what we're looking at today. So whether you are a healthcare provider trying to get paid or an HR manager trying to protect your remote team.
Or just someone fascinated by all the weird ripple effects of remote work.
This deep dive is going to fundamentally change how you view state lines.
It really will. We have to kind of shift our whole perspective to understand this.
So let's unpack this 2026 landscape first. Because before we get into the nitty-gritty of denied medical claims, we really need to understand why this is suddenly such a massive issue.
Right, why now?
Yeah. The sources all point to this permanent expansion of remote work. Like businesses are just operating across multiple state lines every single day now.
The data paints a picture of a deeply decentralized environment. You might have an employer whose insurance is rooted in one specific state, but the actual medical treatment for their injured employee is physically taking place.
Thousands of miles away.
Thousands of miles away, exactly. Where someone lives, where they work, and where they unfortunately get hurt are now three entirely different places.
It honestly reminds me of using a cell phone out of network back in the day.
Oh, the roaming charges.
Yes.
Yeah.
You're just going about your business, making calls, sending texts, entirely unaware that you've crossed some invisible digital boundary.
Right.
The phone works exactly the same. But then the billing cycle hits, and you get this massive roaming bill.
You didn't realize you were playing by different rules until the invoice arrived.
Exactly. But I do want to push back on this just a little bit. Haven't people always traveled for work? We've had traveling salespeople, executives flying out for conferences.
Truck drivers.
Right, truck drivers crossing state lines for decades.
Yeah.
Why is 2026 the tipping point where this is suddenly breaking the whole system?
Well, it comes down to a fundamental shift in the sheer volume and the permanence of these arrangements.
This is not just a quick business trip anymore.
No, not at all. It's no longer just the occasional salesperson getting into a fender bender in Ohio while their company is based in Texas.
Gotcha.
The old system could handle those. They were rare exceptions. What we're seeing now is a complete structural realignment.
You're talking about the remote workers who literally never set foot in the home office.
Exactly. Let's walk through a realistic scenario just to see the mechanics of it.
Okay, let's do it.
Say you have a remote worker whose employer is headquartered in New York.
Okay.
That is where the corporate entity exists, and that's where the workers' comp policy is written. But that employee lives full-time in California.
Right, working from their living room in LA or whatever.
Yeah, and when they develop severe carpal tunnel syndrome or they trip over a laptop cord in their home office, they go to a local clinic right there in California.
Makes sense.
This isn't an occasional travel exception anymore. It's a daily, structural, jurisdictional overlap, and it's happening all day, every day.
And that sets up the legal side of things perfectly, actually, because the research draws an incredibly sharp line between two concepts.
Yes, jurisdiction and treatment location.
Right. And the fact that these two things are splitting apart seems to be the core conflict here.
That split is the epicenter of the whole problem. To really grasp this, we have to separate those two terms entirely.
Okay, so define jurisdiction for us.
Jurisdiction refers to the specific state whose system legally governs the claim. That jurisdiction determines absolutely everything of consequence.
Meaning the rules, the money?
Exactly. It decides how the claim is administered, the exact process for disputes, and crucially for the doctors, how reimbursement is evaluated and paid out.
Okay, and then you have the treatment location, which is just, the physical geography.
Just the building where the healing happens.
Where the doctor's office is located.
That's it. So going back to our scenario, the treatment location is California. The patient is sitting on an exam table in California, talking to a California licensed doctor.
But the jurisdiction holding all the power is New York.
Exactly.
Wait, so a California clinic has to literally learn the billing laws of all 50 states just to stay in business?
Basically, yes.
Like, if I'm a California doctor treating a patient right here in my California clinic, you're saying I have to practice medicine under the legal shadow of a completely different state.
You absolutely do. And the reason this is so difficult is that workers' compensation is not a federal program.
Right, there's no national rule book.
None. It is a highly fragmented patchwork of 50 different state laws, 50 different fee schedules, and 50 different sets of administrative procedures. The jurisdiction holds the purse strings. It doesn't matter if your clinic has palm trees outside the window. If the claim's jurisdiction is rooted in New York's rules dictate your reality.
That sounds like an absolute nightmare for the administrative staff at clinic.
Oh, it is.
Which I guess brings us to the trap of what the sources call business as usual billing.
Yes, the billing assumptions.
Because if I'm running a clinic in California, my software, my staff, my daily habits, they are all completely optimized for California rules.
Of course they are.
The drop-down menus in my electronic health records are already pre-populated with California codes.
It's entirely logical for clinics to operate that way. It's institutional muscle memory. Providers naturally assume that because they are physically located in California billing rules apply.
So they just fill out the familiar forms.
Yeah.
They submit the paperwork the exact same way they've done it 1,000 times before.
Right, for local workers. But the insurance carrier, who might be sitting in a high-rise in Chicago or Manhattan, they are evaluating that exact same claim using the jurisdiction where it was filed.
And this is where the gears completely jam.
Right, they shatter. The provider is operating on a set of assumptions that the insurance carrier doesn't share.
Yeah.
It's not that the medical care was wrong or that the treatment wasn't necessary. It's that the paperwork speaking for that treatment is written in a foreign language, as far as the out-of-state carrier is concerned.
It's like playing a board game, where the doctor thinks they're playing Monopoly, but the insurance company is judging them by the rules of chess.
That is a great way to put it.
Like the doctor's rolling the dice, trying to build a hotel on Boardwalk, and the insurance carrier's rejecting the move because the doctor's rook is exposed.
Right.
It's two completely different games happening on the exact same board.
Yeah.
But how do providers even realize they're in the wrong game before the bigs are denied?
Honestly, many providers don't realize they're playing chess until those denials actually start rolling in.
Ouch.
Yeah. And the most critical failure point we see in the research is the authorization process.
Let's unpack that authorization challenge, because knowing you're in a different jurisdiction is only half the battle, Rand.
Barely half.
Once the California doctor figures out they're playing by New York rules, they suddenly have to figure out how to actually get permission to do the surgery or start physical therapy.
And every single state jurisdiction has its own unique, highly specific steps for getting a medical treatment approved before you actually do it.
Give me an example of how different it can be.
Well, in some states, you might need a specific form signed by a specific timeline. In others, you might have to go through a utilization review board.
Which is what, exactly?
It's essentially a panel of third-party doctors who evaluate if the MRI or the physical therapy you're requesting is actually medically necessary according to that specific state's guidelines.
Okay, so the doctor in California assumes they have the green light based on their local monopoly rules.
Right.
They go ahead and do the surgery.
They do the surgery, they bill it using their local California rules, and the out-of-state carrier just flat out rejects it.
Just like that.
They'll say, you didn't file Form X within 48 hours, or you didn't run this past our state's utilization review board, so this treatment is legally unauthorized.
Wow.
Suddenly, the provider's looking at massive reimbursement delays, or worse, they aren't getting paid at all for services they've already rendered.
That is terrifying for a small medical practice. You are doing the right thing for the patient clinically, but you're getting financially penalized because of a paperwork mismatch.
Exactly.
So how does a clinic actually survive this? Because you can't just cross your fingers and wait for the denials to show up in the mail.
No, you definitely can.
The research provides a playbook, but what does that actually look like in practice?
Healthcare practices need a deliberate, proactive strategy from day one. You can't wait until the invoice is rejected. The very first step is identifying the claims jurisdiction immediately.
Done.
You have to know what game you're playing the moment the patient walks in the door.
See, I have to challenge the practicality of that for a second.
Okay, go for it.
Identifying the jurisdiction early sounds fantastic on a spreadsheet, but let's look at the physical reality of a busy medical clinic.
It's chaotic, I know.
Right. An injured patient walks through the door. They are in pain, they might be bleeding, or they just blew out their knee. Is the front desk staff really going to hit the pause button on compassion to interrogate this person about the corporate structure of their out-of-state employer?
It's a tension every healthcare provider feels, for sure. But we really have to separate clinical triage from administrative intake.
Okay, fair.
If it's a life-threatening emergency, medical triage always comes first. You treat the patient. But for the vast majority of workers' comp claims, we're talking repetitive stress injuries, minor falls, ergonomic strains.
Stuff from terrible home office chairs.
Exactly. For those, there is a standard intake process.
The old clipboard of paperwork in the waiting room.
Yes. The administrative side of the clinic must verify that jurisdiction the moment that clipboard is handed over.
Oh, I see.
If the front desk staff sees an out-of-state employer listed, that needs to trigger an immediate internal protocol.
But how do they actually verify the rules? Do they just, Google New York workers' comp laws and hope for the best?
No. The front desk staff literally has to pick up the phone, call the out-of-state adjuster, and ask for their specific state's fee schedule and authorization forms before the patient goes in for their MRI.
Just get them on the phone right then and there.
Yes. They have to ask, what are your specific authorization requirements for this jurisdiction? Because if they wait until after a month of physical therapy to ask that question...
The provider might essentially be doing a month's worth of medical work for free.
Exactly. I know it feels cold to focus on the paperwork when someone is hurt, but if the clinic can't keep its doors open because of frozen payments, they can't help anyone at all.
That's a really good point.
The administrative rigor is what allows the clinical care to continue.
Right.
And once you identify the jurisdiction and call to confirm the billing rules, the final piece of the strategy is maintaining crystal clear records.
Now, maintaining clear records explaining the treatment rationale, that seems like it's just good medical practice anyway, right?
It is, yeah.
Why is it so crucial for these cross-state claims specifically?
Because in a cross-state claim, your documentation is basically doing double duty. When you operate within your own local jurisdiction, there's often a shared understanding.
Like an unspoken shorthand.
Right. You might rely on local shorthand or assume the adjuster reviewing the file knows the standard of care in your specific California county.
Gotcha.
But when you cross state lines, you lose all of that shared context.
Because the adjuster sitting in Chicago has absolutely no idea how your clinic in Los Angeles operates.
Exactly. Your documentation has to be bulletproof. It has to clearly articulate exactly why this treatment is medically necessary, leaving zero room for interpretation.
Because that out-of-state auditor is actively looking for a reason to deny the cost based on their state's guidelines.
You have to assume they are, yes.
Man. So, synthesizing everything we've covered today, the big takeaway is that cross-state workers' compensation claims are an undeniable structural reality of the 2026 workforce.
They aren't going away.
Remote work has permanently blurred the lines, and healthcare providers have to adapt. They really must internalize the difference between the claims jurisdiction and the physical treatment location.
The physical clinic is just where the healing happens.
Right.
The jurisdiction is the legal universe that actually pays the bills.
So providers have to abandon their local billing assumptions? You can't just play Monopoly because you're used to it and your software is set up for it.
No, you'll lose every time.
You have to proactively verify the documentation rules of whatever game the insurance carrier is playing, get on the phone with the adjusters, and make your clinical documentation bulletproof, or you just won't survive the financial freeze.
Understanding these invisible borders is essential. It ensures healthcare providers can keep their lights on.
And it helps businesses actually manage their remote teams without falling into massive compliance nightmares.
Exactly. And most importantly, It ensures injured workers don't get caught in the crossfire of bureaucratic billing disputes when all they really want to do is heal and get back to work.
It's just a massive invisible web. And the more remote work continues to decentralize how we live and earn a living, the more tangled this web is going to get.
Which, it leaves us with a rather profound question to consider moving forward.
Oh, what's that?
Well, as companies continue to decentralize, we're increasingly seeing employees who have never, not even once, stepped foot in their company's home state. What happens when that employee gets injured in their home office? If the constant friction of these cross-state claims keeps escalating, the system will eventually hit a breaking point.
Wait, you mean the actual 50-state system itself?
Yes. Will the sheer administrative weight of all these remote injuries finally force the United States to abandon its patchwork of 50 different state-by-state jurisdictions?
Oh, wow.
Could we be looking at a future where we are forced to adopt a single, unified federal workers' compensation framework just to keep the economy moving?
That is a massive paradigm shift to think about.
It really is.
How much longer can a fragmented 20th century legal framework hold up a 21st century remote workforce?
It's a great question.
It's definitely something for you to chew on the next time you cross a state line. Because remember, the scenery might look exactly the same out your window, but the invisible rules dictating your reality have completely changed. Make sure you know what game you're actually playing. Thanks for joining us on the Deep Dive. Thanks for listening to Workers Comp Unwrapped. If you found value in today's episode, subscribe and share with fellow doctors. Stay informed and keep making a difference in your patients' care.